All right, what is good for the YouTube fam? Welcome. Welcome to Wyckoff Sundays episode 5. All right, so getting into, now the second month here, right? So that first week of the second month, from week 4 to 5 was just crazy, right? And let's go ahead and go over kind of, what happened that week, right? So firstly, we spoke about
Here,
dollar
that pushed the
last
up
week, right? So going ahead and, we obviously positioned into, longs over here during the week before. And so really we were just expecting price to obviously pull back and then see the continuation higher. And obviously that's what we went ahead and said here on stream.
side could change the game.
Let's go ahead and take a look. Wait, hold on.
We typically don't see redistributions like holding so long, like the lows, right? Like we've just been holding and holding and holding the low.
And so again, like because we were staying in this range for so long, we were really thinking, all right, yeah, we're probably going to go ahead and break out this week. I don't know exactly where I called that out, which is what I
Us doing what do you call it? This low, buy opportunity in, see
yeah,
how
we
it
were thinking
goes,
maybe
right?
buys
Be
there,
good
but
to
obviously
see,
price
like
did just
with
end up
frame analysis there, right? I wouldn't use this zone
flying,
again.
right? So really that's what we were looking for, right? What we spoke on was seeing the market go ahead and like actually make a new high, which is exactly what happened, right? So let's see if we, where do I have it? I just want to, so I know I just drew it. But yeah, it's fine. Right? You guys can obviously go back and just watch it. But yeah, really the idea was, when we were there last week, which was again right down here, right? So we're gonna stick to the 4 hour here. So right here was Wyckoff Sundays, right? And pretty much again, the outlook for the week was crushed, right? We went ahead and saw, US dollar go ahead and break out into new highs really beautifully. And so with that, some of our swing trades that we took over here hit really nicely. Went ahead and took pretty good profits on that, and I'm gonna go ahead and close it probably this week as well, which we'll talk about in a bit. But um, but yeah, really really nice reaction from this level, right? We spoke about this daily zone down here. And so really all we were looking for was like after having such a huge sell off to the downside, we wanted to see those signs of accumulation, which we did end up seeing down and into these lows before the buy up, right? We can see this range being created, right? Price sweeping below those ranges, break in structure, retracement, and then simply boomed to the upside, right? So again, just waited for the right price action, waited for our right timing inside of the right zone. And yeah, I believe it was like Wyckoff Sundays episode 3 where we went ahead and called out the buys from this zone here potentially. When price was all the way up here, right? That was when we went ahead and called out this potential zone to see buys happen, right? So really cool to just watch it play out all in real time. And again, like you guys can go back, watch these recordings. They're really, really good to just get you guys to see like what good higher time frame analysis looks like, right? From that top down perspective. So yeah, that was dollar. All right, pretty much spot on, right? Just looking for longs from that zone. And then, NZD USD, obviously like currencies as a whole, we were just looking to see follow that. Personally, I didn't take any currency trades at all last week because again, like price had kind of already traded away. So, there wasn't really any point for me to like try and catch something on the way up. But again, like, Euro USD going ahead and breaking down to new lows. GU going ahead and breaking down to new lows last week, right? AU, ended up holding up pretty nicely, right? So this could be something that we can buy, maybe later on, which we'll talk about in a bit. NZD USD as well, pretty nice sell-off, right? Still hasn't made a new low. I do think it probably will. So we'll see later on. And then yeah, pretty much again, just across the board, really the same idea throughout, right? Really just nice continuations of the moves that we were already looking for on dollar, right? So that was currencies that we went over, right? Major currency pairs there. We did speak about looking for sells on AU a little bit higher, but obviously price never ended up getting into that zone last week. We just kind of, held this structure here for a while. So not surprised that we're getting above now. But again, I'm not too sure how convinced I am to like look for more longs here, which we'll talk about later. All right. Now that was currency pairs. All right. After that, we went over into what else? Oh, yeah, we spoke about USD CAD. Oh, we spoke about U Chef. This was actually a really good one. We were looking for, price to go ahead and take this low here, right? But respect this yellow zone over there that we had marked up. And as you guys can see, wait, so actually let's go ahead and see if we have the drawing of that.
the internal liquidity, right? And then starting to walk our way back up, right? Maybe we can see that still happen, right? We have equal highs sitting right over here. Again, if it does end up being a reaccumulation, it's going to be a redistro. This
Yeah,
for
I
some
guess I
time.
didn't. Okay, that's
Every
fine. Whatever. Again, you guys can rewatch it. But yeah, we were talking about sweeping the low there for USD Chef. That ended up playing out perfectly as well. This could have been something to position in last week, but personally, I did not go for it. But yeah, as we can see, this is where we were on Wyckoff Sundays. The market opened. We literally just barely took out that low there, and then we ended up seeing the continuation for the rest of the week. So Wyckoff Sundays again, spot on that side of things. All right. Then we had gold. All right. And this gold was honestly just like perfect higher time frame analysis from last Sunday. Um, One second. Okay, yeah. So, here we ended up seeing the market, obviously create this really high volume low, which we pointed out on Wyckoff Sundays, right? And so pretty much starting off early in the week, we saw, the market was here on Sunday, and then the market started to kind of like trade down, started to make like lower highs, right? And so during this third lower high here, we managed to catch a short opportunity that brought us all the way down below that higher time frame low, which was beautiful, right? Really love to see that happening. Again, like because one, it gave us good buying opportunities, but two, obviously, we did manage to recognize the sells too, coming down to that level. So that was pretty much what we were looking for on Wyckoff Sundays, was for, again, the market to just go ahead and sweep below those previous lows for gold. And then from there, look for accumulations back up from that area, right? And obviously, we could see what ended up happening, right? So this was where we were on Wyckoff Sundays, right? Price started to make those lower highs, right? Over here, I took a short, right? Did manage to catch it all the way down to the new low. And then over here, that's that high volume low that we can see that the market went ahead and traded below, before going ahead and seeing the continuation to the upside, right? So again, we stuck to the higher time frame plan here, right? We said that we did like, this zone over here for potential reactions. We were liking how, again, like that was a pretty clean sweep back into previous zones. And so we were looking for that to be order flow, right? And so seeing the market get back into there, we went ahead and looked for longs here, and this will also be a video that we will be posting soon enough because we did call this out live on stream, right? So really, really cool, price action there on gold, right? Then we spoke about silver. Okay, so silver, really same idea. All right. We spoke about how silver also had this very high volume low right there. And we said we'd probably end up seeing the market trade below, there, right? And we were also, again, looking at this zone here for potential reactions, just looking to see when price would really line up. I don't know exactly where. It doesn't look like we did talk about the sweep there. But yeah, on silver, I believe we did also say that we'd probably end up seeing the market trade below there. And yeah, once again, like happened really beautifully, right? This is where we were on Sunday. Price traded up, right? Came down. Again, still respecting this previous zone here that we were looking at, right? From the stream. And then, from there, accumulating below that high volume low, which is exactly what we want to see, right? So let me bring up the volume here, actually. Okay, so again, really big high volume low here, right? Price started to get below on lower volume, and then we ended up seeing the reactions to the upside, right? So pretty classic Wyckoff type price action there with this. And so silver again called out spot on from that stream there, right? And then, we had BTC, right? And so BTC is still in the process of playing out. But right, like we did end up catching a really beautiful reaction on BTC from this. We managed to take advantage of multiple times. And so yeah, basically here with BTC, we had the market go ahead and, kind of create this accumulation here. We had a distribution that recently happened. And so what we were saying was that we wanted to see the market trade back into that area, right? Create like accumulation, within this previous zone here, right? And then just again, eventually get that opportunity to like potentially even buy it back up, maybe even into, new highs, if that's what the market wants to do, right? And so, yeah, we spoke about that on BTC, right? Bigger time frame to smaller time frame wise. And obviously we just had to wait for the week to really take place, right? I think this entry ended up happening on Thursday for this. but we did end up coming really deep into this leg to the downside and ended up seeing a beautiful buy up about 2,000 dollars or so movement on BTC, right? Which we'll go ahead and look at. And so this is what ended up happening, right? So obviously this is the distribution right here, right, that we were talking about. And so we were saying, okay, we'll probably end up getting a pullback back into the zone and then looking for signs of accumulation inside of this area, right? And obviously that is what ended up happening, right? Pretty nice accumulation happening in these areas. And we ended up, basically buying from this zone over here, also live on stream. So we'll go ahead and definitely take a video of that as well for you guys to learn from, right? But really, really great setup there, right? And again, moving about 2,500 pips or so, right? So really cool to see, again, us calling out that bigger time frame zone. And then we end up seeing the market go ahead and trade really nicely into there. And going back going back bullish for us, right? Because again, I do think BTC still looks decent. And we'll talk about what we can see looking, going forward, right? If we'll still see buys here from not, the market hasn't, really told us just yet, right? But we don't necessarily look bearish either, right? I wouldn't say we look bearish, I wouldn't say we look bullish, either, right? So it's like we're kind of in a bit of an in-between because of what happened over the weekend. But we'll chat about that here in a bit, right? But yeah, as you guys can see, that's pretty much everything, all the major pairs. Oh, sorry, indices, of course. What am I saying? So indices, we spoke about NASDAQ and like US 30 and all this stuff. We spoke about the fact that we were still bullish on these assets, that we wanted to see bounces from these zones on the bigger time frame, right? And we just needed the smaller time frame to really align. I believe we did call out like for NAS to break the low there, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see if we did. Maybe start out with.
So it could, and so it's like, we'd like to get in a more extreme area to really start to, again, if we do see the right price action in more extreme areas, it becomes a little bit more high probability and a lot higher risk to reward for us
So
to look
yeah, there we go. So that's what we did call it out. So we did call out the
between,
sells
like the
back
low and the
down
high.
below through there. I mean, not this, we didn't call out sells, but we called out the
And so it's
run
like,
and then go ahead and
we'd like to get in a
accumulate
more extreme
below
area to really start to,
right
again,
there,
if we do
right?
see.
And so with NASDAQ, we ended up obviously seeing that, right, really beautifully. So this obviously ended up being the range here, right? So where we were with Wyckoff Sundays, it was like right over here somewhere, right? And we said we probably want to go ahead and look for a push below to then go ahead and buy. And that's exactly what happened. And that's also what we took advantage of here, right? Don't have a video recording for this one because it took a re-entry for me to be able to get into this. But yeah, this was again really, really clean setup, really clean bigger time frame idea. It's just about seeing when the lower time frame matches up with it. That can get a little bit tricky, obviously, right? But yeah, still really, really good idea, from this, and it does look like, we accumulated pretty nicely. What happens next remains yet to be seen, but we don't look bad. We don't look bad at all. All right. So, so yeah, guys. So that's pretty much, the main idea, for me, right? Really big, wins, to be honest, last week across the board. Like literally everything that we called out, as we just saw, did go our direction, right? So again, for great examples to really see like how you should be doing bigger time frame analysis or whatever it might be. Like I think Wyckoff Sundays episode 4 is a great example, and also Wyckoff Sundays episode 1 was also really, really good. And this is again really how we should be structuring our trading with what we're doing here, right? Is like, we make the plan early in the week and we execute on the plan, throughout the week, right? Obviously the plan can change, right? But like in terms of based off what we see during the week and stuff like that. But for the most part, like the 4 hour doesn't change too much during the week, the daily doesn't change too much, right? So it's like we should be able to again plan out our plan of action, beforehand, right? But yeah, again, really, really happy with how things went last week and happy with our analysis, bigger time frame and smaller time frame wise. And so I got Steve in the chat here, still holding NAS and BTC positions, right? So we do still have again NAS here, right? And BTC as well, right? For me, BTC, I ended up closing out some, but I did end up, I am looking to re-enter some more, potentially, right? We'll see. But anyways, guys, so let's kind of go ahead and now talk about the pushes, that we've seen so far, and what we can potentially see for the new week. All right, guys. So dollar here for me, obviously has played out really beautifully, right? We've hit our target for the longs, which is just really creating a new higher high. And now, obviously, what remains to be seen is obviously, is this daily accumulation, right? Let me go to a cleaner chart here, actually. So is what we're seeing here on the daily potentially a, clean accumulation schematic, right? Could this like that's kind of what we've still been playing with, and so far, that bias has been going not too bad at all, right? I mean, obviously after that daily down candle, we've been kind of playing with that idea because the rest of this has kind of been ranging, for a really long time here. So the likelihood of, us seeing, this being a schematic, especially after we've had this beautiful daily down candle here that swept the lows, right? We didn't exactly show weakness here, right? We kind of just poked below that low, and then like literally just bought right back up, right? And then now we come back down and we buy right back up. So these types of, moves here, right? Like what we're seeing there, like with those dips, really just getting bought back up so aggressively, especially twice like that, it is a potentially good look, for our theory there, right? I mean, this does bring more validity to the idea of, again, this maybe even being a spring, right? To actually bring us up to, like maybe temporary new highs, right? But new highs nonetheless, right? Obviously, I do still think dollar probably will end up bearish longer term, but we still have to, obviously pay attention to when these kind of, schematics potentially show up because they could be showing that either one, we're having a higher time frame reversal and we want to start to shift away from shorts, or two, that, we just want to shift away from shorts for the short term and then, wait until we can redistribute, right? And then from there, we look for, the next push to the downside, right? So that's why we want to be cautious of it. It doesn't necessarily mean that, we're flipped bullish, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that, dollars like going up and now assets are going to dump or anything necessarily. But, again, like when we see these kind of things, like we just want to be aware of the potential, for a macro shift in the market, right? So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing here so far with dollar, right? Is again, like the way that we have been reacting has been really good for our theory. And so again, like we should probably continue to play within that theory, right? Because I think that, a lot of people last week were probably really anxious to short dollar, right? I think they wanted to go ahead and see that next push down happen. And, again, I think there's a good potential that it doesn't happen just yet, right? I think that we might get pushes down, right? Maybe even lower than our previous low potentially, right? But I don't know that that's going to continue to hold like that, right? So like I think that eventually, right, we probably will end up getting like I wouldn't recommend buys in here because I do think that we will end up getting like some kind of pullback, right? Even before we go to the upside, right? Because even if this is a schematic here, right, we're typically going to need two tests of the spring, right? So we have this spring here, right? That would be like our first test, push to the upside, right? Then we would want to see our second right there, right? And so there is some potential for us to actually come back into this zone, right? Whether that be deep, whether that be even deeper than here, right? And we sweep. But I do think that it does make sense for us to see, a second test happen here, or even just a sweep, even, before there. So we might still be able to like, position. And again, this would be more of like not a macro thought, but more of a, smaller time frame thought is like, can we maybe look for, distributions to happen above this high, right? To go ahead and look for sells, right? So that obviously later on we can go ahead and buy back up, right? So, I might return to currencies next week just for that, right? And if not, if we don't get any, and again, it would have to be like a really good setup, you know what I mean, above that high for me to go for a counter trend trade like that. But, just in case that obviously this previous redistribution, like we said, is kind of the, the first real big obstacle that we have with dollar, right? So this is our distribution up here, right? So this is going to be our first obstacle here with dollar. So if we get up into there and again, like we show the right price, the right type of price action, this could end up being a zone that we go ahead and sell off from, right? Get people to think we're going to drop, right? And then maybe once we get back into areas, we can get the second test and then go ahead and buy back up, right? So that's what we're going to be kind of looking for, right? For me, like I'm not really looking for any buys with dollar until we end up really getting back down into this zone here. And I have a feeling it won't, it like what's going to happen first is we're going to go ahead and drive up first, right? Get back up into these previous highs and stuff, right? Kind of create some short-term opportunities for sells. And then again, when we get down into here, right, to then look for the next longs to the upside would be the most ideal situation for me, at least for what I'm thinking, right? Only time will tell here with it because right now we're just in a pretty awkward spot. Like we just barely passed the high. Um, so again, I'm not expecting any like big distributions from here. I do think we'll still buy up. I guess the most ideal scenario would be that we do just drop instantly from here, because then that would actually give me some more confidence that we'll actually end up seeing the next high get set. But said only time will tell, right? But those are really the two main situations. So two bigger time frame zones that I'd really be looking for on dollar is going to be, just pulling back into the previous accumulation. I guess the order flow would be here. Mhm. From there, like this will be my second zone up here, with the distribution, right? So if we get a situation where the market sells off, from here, right, without like, again, like getting like, oh, whoops, that's a highlighter. But yeah, if the market can sell off from there without getting like too much, like new highs or anything, or like not any highs at all, sorry, like if we can just drop straight from there, this could end up being a zone where we just continue the order flow to push up into those highs. That's the kind of position I'd want to get into, right? So we'll see if maybe this 4 hour down candles can be a zone for us, right? We do have 4 hour imbalance as well. But definitely buys, if we're going to look for anything, are going to have to be below, this previous low here. Right? So we want to see those lows break. We want to see price like basically accumulate down here. And then from there, we can look for, the next buys back up, right? So yeah, so that's the idea there with dollar. All right, so we'll see how that ends up playing out, but that's kind of the bias, right? So really two main zones are going to be up here and down here. All right. Obviously, our bigger time frame is still telling us that buys look good because we're seeing these, sell-offs really get bought back up very aggressively, right? Which is a good sign, for our trade. But nevertheless, we want to make sure that like again like we're like even if we're going to be like if the market doesn't end up giving us those buy setups, right, we want to actually like even potentially be positioned if the bigger time frame trend just continues and we just hold the order flow up here, right? So I would say in here if we get manipulation, let's do it. I would say if down here we end up holding these highs and then maybe we can potentially buy back up below those lows, is kind of my initial thought here. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, cool. So now let's go into currencies. All right, so currencies, let's go with EU. So EU looks interesting, right? The reason I say EU looks interesting is because there's really like a lot of liquidity definitely sitting to the upside. I mean, firstly, let's start off with the daily, kind of the same idea as what we were talking about before with dollar is that again, like, can this have potentially been a bigger time frame sweep for a bigger time frame accumulation for us to maybe even sell off aggressively? That could still be in the cards, right? But again, as of right now, I mean, like it's just kind of like holding a little too well, I guess you could say, right? So even here at the top, we got like relatively equal highs that are sitting there at the top here, right? And then on top of that, we have like almost like just really aggressive trend line down, right? Type of thing, right? And we're coming back into previous zones and stuff. So I kind of like, I don't really like this too much for like looking for sells, for example, because of that, right? Because we have like, such simple structure here. Like the sellers are just really easily, positioning themselves into the market here. And I don't really like to be in the market, like obviously on the side that's really easy to position. I want to be on the side that's really difficult to position that people can, for like the average person to position themselves in, I mean, right? So that's kind of my thought process with this is like I like this the least, to be honest. Like if I were to look for continuations for, like dollar, right? Like I would probably like Euro USD the least because we have that liquidity there. And so like honestly, like even if we were gonna look for it, I would honestly probably want to see this whole thing get cleaned up. And then maybe inside of this high, if we get like again signs of distribution or something, right? Then we can go ahead and look for the pushes down. But truthfully, for EU, like I said, I like it the least because the liquidity above doesn't really scream bearish to me, right? And it screams that we might end up getting like a liquidity sweep if the market does end up, getting back up into there, right? So with Euro USD, that's kind of what I'm thinking. All right. Yeah, no worries, brother. And with GU, similar but a bit better, right? Like obviously GU has been pretty slow coming down. Well, not really actually, sorry, it's been pretty aggressive actually. There hasn't really been a lot of bullish candles here now that I'm looking at this again here. But yeah, so there hasn't really been like huge moves down in terms of like sorry, huge moves back up or anything in terms of pullbacks, right? But yeah, some zones that really, would potentially look good if we were going to look for continuations would be like that small pullback we have there. We do have a institutional candle there at the top that could end up being a good area for us to sell from. All right. But again, it's like relative to EU, it's just it makes me feel less confident, to be honest. Like I don't really like it as much because of like, those zones like not being super clear, right? And kind of moving a little bit slow. But it's not necessarily a bad thing because when I look here on the daily, what I do see that was really fast and really aggressive was this push to the upside that we engulfed, right? So again, just like with dollar, right? Like that's a pretty bearish sign, right? Like obviously for dollar it's bullish, for EU it's bearish, right? That's a pretty bearish sign. Like having such a big up candle like that, right? Almost looks like an institutional candle. It's just it's a little bit it's definitely makes it look like price is more likely to head to the downside. But just when it comes to like zones to really look out for, it's tough for me to really see anything here, right? So what I'd rather do is like, obviously one, either see the full thing sweep, right? Or two, I want to look for a really good institutional candle that happens in that zone, maybe just taking out some of the liquidity and then go ahead and look for a pullback to go ahead and take advantage of that, right? But that's kind of my first thought with this is like I just want to see a sweep, right? Like right now, especially when we have like days of price action just like sliding lower. I mean, obviously, yes, probably a lot of buyers got trapped in these areas and stuff, right? So that's probably why we move so slow. But at the same time, it also like I said, it gives sellers an opportunity to get in. So it's like at some point they're probably going to want to clear out some short-handed, sellers and then continue, with the overall trend and come back down. So that's kind of what I'm thinking there for that. And then for the other side, right, for the devil's advocate side, which is like for us to kind of look for distributions for dollar in the right areas, like up here, for example, right? I think that we could end up seeing these zones here on the daily, right? So obviously, firstly, we have this trap candle right there. That's our last point of order flow. And then below that, there is this push to the downside right there, right? So we'll see if that ends up, like again, what price ends up doing in those areas. But these can kind of be the higher time frame zones that we'd be looking for there, right? So if we didn't, uh, if we didn't clear up some of these, like in the beginning of the week, right? If we don't go straight up and, clear some of this stuff, then again, like, and we do come down, then maybe that can end up being targets for us later on. Like within, like, again, like these highs here and stuff, these can end up being targets or these ones, right? It's kind of the idea that we're looking at. But yeah, cool. And so again, we got EU there, cool. And we got GU, right? So we spoke about GU. For me, I like GU more for selling than I like EU. So I'd rather go ahead and look for these. It's just about, again, going into the right zones. So, this redistribution here can end up being a good zone that maybe we can play off of there, right? That last up candle. And we'll see how price action looks inside of that area to see if we can find continuations lower here with GU. All right. If not, then actually where we are right now isn't technically bad for buys. We do have a reaccumulation down here, right? This would be like our zone there. So maybe if we start to sweep a little more. So if we get the bearish example for dollar, right, then again, we probably end up getting above the highs, which would bring GU down below these lows and then eventually accumulate and maybe get us, to push back up, right? So not bad here from GU, but again, if I were to choose one, I'd probably want to choose EU if I was going to go for this type of opportunity, right? So again, this is how I typically go about it, is I'll kind of have my bigger time frame analysis for what I want with dollar, and then I go ahead and look and see like, okay, well, which pairs will be better for what situation, right? And I do think that, for the dollar short scenario where like dollar comes up here and distributes, I think EU is going to be the better one to use. And for the opposite side, um, if we want to see dollar continue to go bullish, then I think GU will be the one that we're going to want to take advantage of as it looks like it's a lot more trending. And we have good points of interest. Like again, like in the range, right? Like here. Obviously the full range is from this high to this low, but we could just see order flow continue from levels like that, right? So we'll see how price ends up looking in there. Let me look inside of it. So we do have a 4-hour institutional candle there. I just want to see the 2-hour. Yeah, we have a 2-hour candle in there as well. And the 1 hour is decent. Yeah, decent. It's good. So yeah, that could end up being a zone. It could end up being a zone for us to look for smaller time frame price action. Okay. AU. I mean, again, like when dollar had that whole push up, AU barely moved. Right? So AU is looking the strongest right now, right? Out of anything. Like if we did end up seeing a sweep or something like that, right? And again, like if we did get the distribution scenario, which honestly it's kind of looking like we might, like I think AU down here could end up being pretty good. I'd like to see that again, this low just gets swept out one more time, and that would give me like a really clear, I guess you could say like point of entry, right? As opposed to like using this low. I don't really like this current low all that much, right? But yeah, cool, cool, cool. So that's AUD/USD. Now NZD/USD, also looking a lot stronger but weaker than AU. For NU again, I'd probably want to go ahead and see this low here get swept. All right, so go ahead and see like external sweep on liquidity happen, and then for there like a reaccumulation. And also though, like if we were to do the other side though, I actually think NU is not bad. I do like how we already have two touches off of the high, so then seeing for a third wave would be pretty nice. So again, if we do buy off of the open, or like into Monday, into Tuesday, I do think that NU could probably be actually a good one to do the opposite, especially if this low isn't taken. Like then maybe we can see something like this, be a idea for NU, right? Get back up into that zone and then see a new low from there get created, right? And again, that's better for the bearish, I guess you say bullish example $4, right? So we kind of know pretty early on in the week if that's going to be what the situation is for the week. Because again, like it probably happened in the first couple of days. So something we can attempt in the first few days if price action ends up playing out that way, would be again potential continuations on dollar. I'd like for it to happen pretty quickly. Okay, cool. But yeah, again, really with everything else, same idea. I won't go too much into all of them, right? And then we'll just go into the next ones. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking with it, right? Again, like not really in the best place right now, right? We're like literally just barely getting above a high. So it's like could be a sell, could be a buy, could go either way. So we want to see price really push into one direction, get a little bit more extreme in one direction, and then from there, look to see if we get the right price action in our zones, to go ahead and justify looking for the opposite side to get right now, right? Cool, cool, cool. Good stuff. So that's that for those, right? So what's next? Gold, right? So gold, obviously, we're getting very, very close to this previous high here, right? Um, Obviously, when the market opened, we were already back at 5,100, right? So really crazy play, first of all, right? Congratulations to anyone who caught it. Like I said, we did call this out on stream, and we caught the bottom with a really small stop. So really awesome to see how this stuff really plays out, bigger time frame, smaller time frame wise. But yeah, so again, like now that we have this accumulation play out, I mean, it's looking bullish, right? Like, can't really say it's looking anything but bullish, here with gold. Coming back into previous zones, sweeping lows, beautiful reactions, right? Great order flow on the way back up as well. So for me, gold is looking very, very bullish. All right. In terms of us going ahead and taking advantage of it, bit tough to say. You know, bit of a trend line here, but it's also could be order flow. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like again, like if I were to really like a zone, it would be down here, right? Like I already have these zones ready and marked up because that's kind of where I would like it. Like I don't like to play trades like this, like where price comes back into like lows like that one, for example. Like we saw a really sharp push down here. Could that be the bottom? Maybe, right? But like I do think that these are not the kind of plays I like to do. These are a lot more aligned higher time frame wise, right? When we do like zones like these ones, these pushes down, these are the ones that really, first of all, I mean, give you the best possible entries because we're really getting big sweeps, right? But second of all, like you're going to again, like I said, like also just have bigger risk to reward and stuff like that, like with trades like this one. So for me personally, I don't like to play these kinds here, right? They could happen, right? Sometimes price doesn't come back to my zones, so be it, right? But yeah, if I were to look for gold again, it would probably be below 49.50. That's where I would start to be like, all right, we're getting into a discount. Let me go ahead and, position in something like this again, right? So yeah, I do like gold. Again, I do think it'll continue to buy. But we do have to be careful once we do reach our target, right? So this is something I will mention, like once we start to get up into new highs, which we're about to, right? Once we get up into here, now we're going to be testing out those areas. We're going to be testing out those areas for supply and demand. What's the market going to be saying in those areas? If we just pump through, which is again normally what gold does, and I wouldn't be surprised to see gold just pump through. Um, like then we're just going to be confirmed extremely bullish that we're accepting these new prices above, right? But if we get above this high and we start to distribute again, honestly, it could be a pretty scary moment for holding gold buys, right? Again, just because like we've had highs that have had signs of manipulation in them, right? So like this high's had signs of manipulation, that high has had signs of manipulation, right? And then we've obviously reaccumulated both of them, right? But if we get this third one up and then we distribute, then I would be looking a little scared to see if this whole thing just becomes a redistribution as a whole, right? So right now, I don't think there's any danger, but I will just say like, obviously pay yourself into strength, right? Pay yourself into, new highs. And once we do make those new highs, just let the market show you, right? Are we going to get distributions, right? Does it look like a UTAD above previous highs? And if it does look like a UTAD above previous highs, then that's where again we're going to be wanting to, uh, you know, reposition or maybe like close our trade in full, or even just like, I don't know, yeah, maybe even short, right? We'll see. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking with gold. So obviously, not too much to say. We really had a beautiful move already happen, right? Likelihood of us pulling back all the way to here is pretty low. And so I do think that most likely we're gonna just rip on through. And then if we do rip on through, what's gonna happen in there? Right? Are we gonna get, signs of distribution, or are we just gonna get full on strength, right? Because right now this is all just full on strength. Okay. So what I'm personally leaning towards is for this to just continue to boom, but we always want to be cautious above highs like that to see. Break and retest of that target line. I don't know if you're talking about this line here, yeah, but no, I don't personally enter on break and retest. I don't do continuation trades. I do reversal trades, right? So I'm looking to catch tops and bottoms in the market. I'm not looking to catch the market when it's already continued. And so again, like what I'd really want would be like for gold to just create a higher time frame pullback for us, right? And then if it does, then we'll go ahead and take advantage of it in that time, right? But we'll see, right? Again, I need a higher time frame pullback to really play. So for this with gold, we don't have that, right? And so again, if we do end up seeing what happens above here, yeah, maybe we can play it for shorts. But I do think that gold looks very bullish and it's going to continue to look bullish, I think. Silver hasn't even broken through here. And so I do expect silver to do so as well. But again, only time will tell, only time will tell. So yeah, with silver, again, like I said, yeah, that's really the same analysis as with gold. We'll probably push through to new highs, right? I feel like gold will probably break 5,120 pretty easily, probably like as soon as the market opens, to be honest. And then silver, again, breaking 86, 87 shouldn't be a problem. Right? Um, So yeah, probably even higher. So truthfully, I'm that's what I'm leaning towards. I'm still bullish on these assets, and we just gotta wait and see what the price action prints above those highs. So that's silver. All right. Now let's go ahead and tap into indices. Okay. So Nasdaq, I'm personally still bullish on, right? We did have kind of a long, tough pullback, right, over here since we had that high. This high here was a bit scary because we did have like a sweep happen inside of that high, but there wasn't really like there was obviously no follow through from the sell off, right? We did end up getting below where the buy started, right? But we can see that we bought back up very aggressively on Friday, right? So, and we did that while sweeping lows, right? So, oh shoot, here, right? So all these lows here, right? This low, this low, this low, all of them got taken by that push to the downside right there, right? And so that for me is a pretty bullish sign. That actually almost looks like it could be a LPSY for our trade, right? So that could be a zone that we maybe even, play off of again during the week. And again, that's more like smaller time frame analysis, right? But again, like this could be a zone there for sure, right? There's actually a 4-hour candle in that area too. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking is like maybe this zone here. Zone there can hold. So yeah, seeing the market trade back down into those levels, buy back up is what I would want. And again, like my first target here is 25, 5, like 450 basically, like where these distributions are. I think that should be pretty simple to hit, right? And so I do expect it to hit there. Just probably just have to give it time, right? But like I said, this is how it goes with higher time frame accumulations, right? You got to let the pullbacks happen. You got to let the sweeps happen, because people need to get kicked out before we see the big long-term moves really play out. So yeah, really good stuff though from Nasdaq. I do like what happened this week, and we just want to go ahead and just follow that bias. To be honest, I don't look for sells here personally. I think we break this high and this high, and so I think any dips that we have. I think should be good to long. Um, but, time will tell, as I keep saying. All right, and so US 30. All right, same idea. We could see that the market created this internal low here. US 30 just barely swept below that internal low, right? So we had this low here. Bring my brush. We had that low there, right? Price had a really good reaction up, and then we just barely swept below that low there that ended up creating the new high. So that's very indicative of potential internal sweeps on liquidity, especially because this external low did not get taken, right? So since the external low did not get taken and the internal low did, and we had a sizable reaction out of that move, with displacement, with structure shifts, all that, um, then this can potentially be, like I said, a good potential zone. Um, we do have a gap here on US 30. Maybe this could end up being an area. But really, just as a whole, I'll do it like this. It's just going to be this push to the downside, right? That push to the downside right there. Price trades away, and then we'll see if in here we can get another set of buys. Cool. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much that. Last thing we'll go over is going to be crypto, and then we're good for the day. So crypto, BTC, all right. We did obviously call out, like I said last week, really, really nice buy, right? Let me actually go ahead and bring up our Okay, yeah. So like I said, right, we have this range playing out here, right? Market goes ahead and trades, like trades down below that range. So we went ahead and went our buys, right? But once the market came up here, this is where I was really cautious, right? And I dropped in the chat, that I might want to be like looking for partials inside of this high. If we did end up seeing price like break and hold below 68.3, which it did obviously end up doing. And so, that was definitely the opportunity there for partials. But yeah, so essentially, like what happened here with BTC is like we definitely have a clean accumulation, right? That's not even a debate. This accumulation was, a successful accumulation, right? As it is. Now the question is this, right? Is this point right here, right? And let me just pull this up. Is this going to be our signs of strength? Okay. Oh, there we go. So yeah, this is either going to be our signs of strength or it's going to be our UTAD, right? So it's like a bit of a tricky situation. And right now, truthfully, I mean, like, I can't lie, it's looking more like the UTAD perspective, right? It's looking more and more like, maybe this doesn't end up being the top, truthfully, even though I do want to see this continue to buy, I am in BTC longs. I really didn't like how this happened, right? When we see price just break through the high, but do so in a way that, again, it can be considered manipulation. That's what it looks like when we do have redistribution scenarios playing out, right? So, that's kind of the fear, right? For currently for this trade, right? But obviously we have not, even though this has some UTAD potential, we have not confirmed that UTAD at all. We haven't even broken order flow yet at all, right? And so we can see here, like, where's the order flow, right? So obviously our last point of manipulation was the LPSY, right? And same with, this zone over here, right? We had imbalance and stuff, right? We had liquidity also that was built up here. So this is really the decision point where we are right now, right? If we can actually get an extension here, towards 68, right? If we can actually even get above, like, basically the point is like either one, we're going to get above 68.7, and this looks like a clean accumulation for the rest of the time. Or two, we end up breaking below the LPSY here at 66.4. And then, from there, it's looking like we're most likely seeing lower prices there, right? Again, like I said, I personally want to go towards the strength side, especially with all the other assets and stuff. But, that being said, again, it's like this here, just not at all what I wanted to see happen for a trade that I'm taking, right? And again, like to show you guys again, like why it's like even though this is a clean accumulation, why are we saying this could potentially be a UTAD? Well, let's look at how some other redistributions have looked, right? We ended up taking a trade here, for example, on GBP USD way back in the day, right? And we basically took trades like I believe it was right, I believe it was in here. I believe our trade looked something like that, right? And so what were we doing? We were looking to basically go ahead and see this here as an accumulation, right? We wanted to see, obviously, again, the highs of that accumulation go ahead and get swept, right? Sorry, not swept. We wanted to see it like break through, right? Obviously, because we were, looking for accumulations. We were bullish, right? On GU. And then price came back, right? Started reacting, started showing order flow and stuff. And so, really how that looks to me is again like pretty bullish, right? But then once we got into this high here, what do we start seeing, right? Well, we started to see the market obviously getting above those highs, but doing so in a way that looks like strength at first, but ends up being institutional candles, right? Really big pushes to the upside, comes back down, gets bought up, right? Pretty aggressively. And then again, the market ends up creating another institutional candle before selling off again, right? So this here is like what redistributions typically look like, right? We get a completely valid accumulation, and then when price gets up and above the high, this is when we start to be like, okay, we're either looking for real signs of strength here, or we could be seeing that, the market is going to go ahead and give a deeper pullback if we end up getting, like these institutional candles and smaller time frame manipulations, right? Like I think here on the 5 minute, we got some pretty good price action in there. Price just like taking liquidity and stuff like that. Areas like this one and stuff, and just getting swept there too. So yeah, I don't know, just like when it comes to this here, like with this price action, with that like liquidity buildup, sweep, push back down, liquidity buildup, sweep, push back down. I mean, that lower high formation makes it look quite sketch, right? And that's kind of what we have on BTC, right? So that's the part that makes this, I feel like, scary, right? That's the part that makes this feel like, are we really going to see this? Are we really going to continue to see this rally hit? It's tough to say at this point, right? Because again, this could still be a signs of strength, and we could just be coming back for an LPSY right now at this moment. So that's kind of again like what the idea I'm playing with here on BTC. I think we're just really just in the indecision point. This is kind of like again like our area where we're going to decide what's going to happen. I feel like, right? I feel like if we, again, like I said, if we start to break below and hold below that 66.5 level down below there, then again, like we're probably gonna see this whole thing become a redistribution. But until then, we're still in an accumulation, right? And so, I'm still potentially looking for this to again go ahead and buy up towards 69, right? 70. With this, it's just about like how's it gonna do it, right? Currently, right, we were talking about this earlier, but we are sweeping through some pretty significant lows here, right? We do even have these previous lows here as well on the lower time frame. We're doing a lower time frame sweep in here, right? So I do wonder if like we do hold here, I do think that BTC does look pretty bullish if we get a big reaction up, from this area over here, then I think that we can potentially again like get towards 68, get towards 69, and then, go from there. So it is not looking too shabby, I would say, for the buys to continue, right? Obviously, the high was a little scary to happen here, right? Big buy up that gets engulfed right back down, right? We just saw weakness continuing into there. But if we get strength from here, then this is going to be a key level that could potentially completely reverse, all of that price action pretty quickly. Like this whole push down could potentially be reversed pretty quickly if we do get, this low to hold, right? And again, that is lower time frame price action, so we're not going to talk about it too much, but just kind of sharing what I'm thinking, right? Because again, when we look at the 4 hour, not too much has changed, right? We do have a nice up candle there that happened. But that being said, we also have this beautiful 4 hour down candle here, definitely a point of demand, right? So it's like we could easily just buy up from there and continue the overall trend, right? Like we just have low to high, low to high, low to high. That's personally what I'm still thinking is going to happen, right? But granted, what happened in the high was not great for us. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much that. Again, not too much to say here. We just got to see what the market does. We're in the middle of a range, right? But if we do buy from here, then I think we have a good chance of even breaking all the way up to 71. So, if you want to re-enter, re-enter. If you want to take partials, whatever you need to do. But, hold it through and see what happens. But yeah, guys, that's gonna be it. All right, we'll see what ends up playing out, next week when we revisit again for Wyckoff Sundays. Yeah, guys, so best of luck this week. All right, trade safe, and I will catch you guys on the next one. All right, much love, much appreciation. So.